No.
I'm not really sure now today how much of a leader I am, and here's why. I got here, I went to primp a little because my hair was kind of wind blowing, and I nearly followed another woman right into the men's restroom. So I might be more of a follower. Helen, I do not remember saying that to you. I'm so sorry. I guess I was trying to get rid of her and it didn't work. But Helen asked me to talk about humor and leadership, and honestly, if somebody thinks that humor and leadership don't go together, they probably haven't met Helen. Because we have so much fun in our department. We really do, and we're still very, very productive. Believe it or not, we really are. And I do think humor is important for everybody, not just for leaders. I'm very serious about that. It makes life more fun, and you've probably heard there are a lot of proven health benefits. There really are. It boosts your immunity, and it lowers your stress hormones, and it lowers pain, and it helps prevent heart disease. If you don't laugh, you will die. So keep that in mind here today. Laughter really is the best medicine. But don't give up your antibiotics. You guys. Don't make me use that. I will. So I do think humor is important for everybody, but I think there's some specific reasons why it's especially important for leaders. And these are in no particular order, but the first one I call Barney Fife syndrome. Does anyone know Barney Fife from the Andy Griffith show? Yeah? Well, it's counterintuitive, but I think the more seriously we take ourselves, the less seriously everybody else does. Sort of like Barney Fife. You know people like Barney Fife. They march in, they throw their weight around, they leave, and everybody giggles and gets back to doing things the way they were doing them before, right? Like Barney Fife. The second reason that I think humor is important to leaders is that I wish I could sing, but I can't. But if I could sing, I was gonna sing, girls, just want fun. So do boys, so do volunteers, so do men, women, leaders, so do employees. They just want to have fun. I think you're probably all working on very big, important missions. Most of you, anyway, right? You're working on big stuff. And you have some people who you lead who would do that work no matter how hard, how boring, how tedious, how difficult it might be, because they so believe in the mission. But you have other people who might look at another equally important mission where they're having a little more fun, right? So it's important. Girls, boys, leaders, volunteers, men, women, all just want to have a little fun. That's another reason it's important. A third reason that I think humor is very valuable to leaders is because it does make leaders seem more approachable and more friendly and more humble and warmer and kinder. The right kind of humor. Humor puts people at ease. And I think you want those you lead to be very comfortable, because if they're comfortable enough to laugh with you, they are comfortable enough to tell you the bad news and the good ideas and whatever else needs to be said. I do the newsletters at Black Hills Works, and I'm not the most observant person. Witness that I almost walked in the men's restroom. But I once put a picture in a newsletter that really was not appropriate. I didn't notice. My proofreaders didn't notice. Diane, you might remember this. I do. She does. I didn't notice. Nobody noticed this picture until there were 5,000 copies of this newsletter in our mailing area being prepared to be mailed, and then somebody noticed that one of the women in this picture was wearing a t-shirt with a vulgar riddle on it. I'm not going to say the riddle, but it was very inappropriate. The answer was in the back. You could just see the question. And I'll tell you, if that's not bad enough, what made it even worse, excuse me, I'm the headline writer as well. And the headline, I'm not making this up, the article was about case management, and the headline read, "Case managers see it all." I couldn't make that up. So I decided I needed to go quit before I was fired. So I marched into my boss's office, and my boss at the time was Dennis Hope. Did anyone know Dennis Hope? I went in there with the newsletter, and I showed him the riddle. And I was ready for him to tell me to hit the road. And you know what he said? He said, "What's the answer?" If you can laugh with we both laughed then, and if you can laugh with your employees, then they are comfortable enough to tell you the bad news and the good ideas that you want to hear from them. Otherwise, they may not be. The other thing that I think is important for leaders, or why it's important for leaders to have a sense of humor, is because it really does diffuse tension. It really does. Laughter is almost you can just see a switch going off, and there's a tense situation. You can just see it's a physical response. A couple weeks ago, I watched the 40th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. Did anybody see it? And they talked about how 18 days before the opener, the season opener in 2001, what happened? The 9/11 attacks. Yeah. So the question was, do they even go on with the show? Do they even do this? Well, they did go on. And what they did, though, they had special opener with Mayor Giuliani, firefighters, police officers. And at one point in this opener, Lauren Michaels, who's the creator of Saturday Night Live, asked the question, kind of a legitimate question, he said to Mayor Giuliani, "Can we be funny?" Almost asking permission. It almost seems appropriate, doesn't it? However, it was a setup. It was a setup. Mayor Giuliani, or he said, "Can we be funny?" And Mayor Giuliani said, "Why start now?" And it was funny, and everybody laughed, and it was a physical response and a change in the stress of the situation. Now, every day we have situations like that arise. We have meetings, we have tense conversations. Well, not every day, but a few times we have those kind of situations, and the right, well-placed humor, kind humor, can change the whole feeling in the room. So those are the reasons, some of the reasons why I think humor is important to leaders, but you might be thinking, how do you go about having that kind of humor on a day-to-day basis in your everyday life? And I don't know if any of you have ever attended those humor in the workplace kind of workshops. Has anyone been to one of those? Well, they're fun. I've been to a couple. They are fun, but here's what you come away with. You come away thinking, well, we gotta have Costume Friday. Or maybe we've got to have a jester that tells Opie and Lena jokes at staff meetings, or, I got to take a comedy stand-up class. But I really don't think that's what it is. I really think that we all need to go about creating the kind of culture that everyone knows humor is welcome and encouraged. And being the kind of leaders that those we lead know they can laugh with. I think it's more that. It isn't a matter of, dressing up in costumes and bringing balloons or whatever. I think it's creating a culture and being that kind of person that others are comfortable enough to laugh with. Because if they're comfortable enough to laugh, they're comfortable enough to tell you the bad news and the good ideas. So how do you go about that? Well, I work in an organization that has that kind of culture. I really do. I work in a place where leaders do have a sense of humor. I work at Black Hills Works. We have a very serious, very important mission. We are all about creating a world where every single person is valued, where every single person's contribution counts. It's a big deal. But that doesn't mean we don't have a lot of fun there. And I would go so far as to say that the fact that we have a lot of fun makes us more effective for the reasons I mentioned. It does decrease stress. Employees do feel like they can give the bad news when it's necessary, or share an idea when it's necessary. I have a son, and he was in band when he was in middle school. the tuba. And he went to school at West Middle School, and I'm right across the street at Black Hills Works. So he would walk over after school, and if he had his tuba, he'd bring that, and he'd sit in my office and wait for me to take him home. And if I wasn't there, he would just do his homework. Well, one day I was not there. And when I came back, a woman I worked with told me that she had heard the tuba in the hallway. Someone was playing the tuba in the hallway. So she went out to tell my son that that probably wasn't appropriate in the middle of a work day in an office building. And I'm not going to name any names here, but one of the members of our executive team, that fine, highly trained, very professional group of leaders who leads Black Hills Works in our very important mission, he was marching up and down the hallway playing my son's tuba. And he wasn't half bad. So how do you go about having the kind of culture where people are comfy without learning to play the tuba or wearing a clown suit on Friday or whatever? How do you go about that? Well, I think the first thing that we all want to do is to laugh at ourselves first. And that is hard. It is really hard. I understand embarrassment. Boy, do I understand embarrassment. I think that we are all, at any given moment, just a split second away from doing something really embarrassing. You know, spilling the water, tripping, saying something we didn't mean, you know, walking into the men's restroom. At any given time, we're just a split second away. So what happens when we do something like that? One thing, there are those who are very kind in the room, and they feel bad for us. But as leaders, that's not what we want. We don't want people we lead to feel bad for us. The other thing that happens, the not as nice people, no, not that they're not nice, but others will laugh at us, and sometimes not very nicely, or they'll try not to, but you can't help it when when something is funny. So we don't want either one of those approaches. So what do we want? How do we prevent that? A lot of people talk about getting the last laugh. I say get the first laugh. I admitted I almost walked into the men's room before you could point it out. Right? Get the first laugh, and you diffuse on either of those other two responses. Back in college, I took